We are officially live. So let's kick this off. So we are live, PivotMe Live, where we've switched our platform a little bit. Instead of our standard podcasting, we are now doing live interviews every Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific time, talking to business owners, business leaders about what they're doing during this time, how they've pivoted their business, and a real focus on opportunities that they see, the benefits that are out there, how they've adjusted their business, and how you can think about adjusting your business to really to not only weather the storm but maximize this time. So this is a time of significant change, not to diminish the struggle. It's definitely there, but if we look for the opportunities, if we look for what our competitive advantage is, we can keep our businesses moving ahead, thriving. We can keep our staff employed, and we can keep delivering to the marketplace because people still need what we have to offer. So we need to be creative on our solutions and be creative about how we deliver those in this time. But there's still an opportunity to deliver. So today we're going to be talking about how this business has pivoted and the opportunities that he has found out there. So let's jump into our guest here real quick. So today my guest is Matt Starrett. He's the founder and owner of True Venture Marketing, a performance marketing group that boasts experience in advertising, analytics, and digital asset creation. Matt, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, April. Thanks so much. I love what you're doing here. I saw some of the other podcasts. I think this is fantastic. There's literally not a time where businesses need more support than right now, right? So everything's so tumultuous. So the what you're bringing to the table is huge, and I'm really proud to be a part of it.
Oh, thank you, Matt.
Of course.
Thank you, Matt.
You're welcome. Well, yeah, I mean, thank you for having me.
Tell us about yourself. Tell us about what you do and tell us who you do it for.
Yeah, True Venture Marketing is, so we started out just helping software as a service companies, venture-backed companies to build systems that allow them to grow and scale. So we started out doing a lot of just testing. We'd help people test Google versus Facebook, Facebook and versus Instagram, LinkedIn versus this. And it gave us this really interesting approach to creating marketing campaigns because we could tell people where their money was best spent. And then since we started doing that about 3 years ago, we've actually we've kind of expanded on our scope of services. Now we do more websites, landing pages, a lot of A/B testing. We call it all. It's kind of wrapped into this whole performance marketing field. And we've opened up who we do that for a little bit too. Now we work with the University of Nevada, some non-government organizations. But we still do a lot of work in that software space in the venture-backed field.
Perfect. Okay. And you said that now you've changed who you've done it with. Is that just in response to current market conditions? Is it just a decision that you made?
Yeah, no, the current market conditions have changed us in a lot of other ways, though.
Sure. Well, we should talk about that. So let's talk about some ways some things have changed for you guys. First start, was your staff in an office? I believe they were, and are they now virtual? Talk to us about just the mechanics of your staffing situation.
Yeah, so we actually were in an office before this, and I'm actually here right now by myself. The whole entire building's empty except for me, but I had some construction going on by my house. So I didn't want that in the audio. Sure. But yeah, we've been working out of a building in downtown Reno for the past about 2.5 years. Mm-hmm. And on, I think, March 13th, right before all the shutdown orders, we kind of had this conversation. It was like, all right, don't come into the office, or at least we're encouraging you not to come into the office. So we switched to virtual on March 13th. We've been fully virtual since then. This is the first time I've been in the office since then, just knowing that I needed somewhere where there's not messed up audio. Mm-hmm. And it's been interesting, right? Fortunately we had some systems in place. We already used Slack to communicate. We already knew how to use video calls. We're a pretty tech savvy organization. We work remotely with our clients already. Mm-hmm. Right. Half of our client base is already in the Bay Area. But we've never had to work remotely as a team. And so it changed a lot. And I'm happy to dive into that a little more. Definitely changed communication. We didn't know how important daily stand-ups would become, and how important just pop-in calls would become. Because that, you know, when you're working in an office, like conversation just can happen and ideas come from that conversation. But when you're working remote, that conversation sometimes doesn't happen. And I think creativity might actually take a hit. So it's really interesting shift.
I was just thinking about that because we haven't talked to as many companies that are focused on creativity. And I would imagine both your environment that you're working in, plus just sort of the organic conversations that happen, like you said, would really take a hit. And how are you guys navigating that? Do you have scheduled calls, which again, don't feel organic and spontaneous, but do you have scheduled calls still? How are you navigating all that?
It's been really interesting. And I didn't think we'd go this route, but so a lot of our best ideas came from just pop-up conversations in the office. Hey, what do you think about this? Hey, what do you think about that? And then we build on each other's ideas. And now we don't get that opportunity. So we have to kind of force these conversations. And I think that what's interesting is I think productivity though has gone up. So like the ideas we do have, they might not always be as like way out there as strong, but they get done so much quicker, it seems like, which is kind of funny. We also have like our pop-up, or we're not pop-up, we have stand-ups in the morning.
Is that like a morning huddle? Like a
morning huddle, 15 minutes or so just of checking in. And then we make sure we all just schedule time with each other throughout the day. So like our designer knows they can schedule time with our copywriter, and copywriter can schedule time with her, you know, and with me, or, you know, anyone can schedule time with anyone. And that's really encouraged right now, so that just so that these ideas can come up.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about that. You brought up an interesting point. I'd never considered that productivity might have an inverse relationship to creativity. Productivity's up, creativity's down.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, that's I wasn't the one to come up with that. I heard that on someone else's podcast. I don't remember whose, but it really struck a chord, and it's been something we're at least acknowledging.
Yeah. So you talked about, scheduling the stand-ups in the morning. What else have you guys done differently to make sure that you're navigating this as well as possible and keeping business in the door? Just talk to us about some of the ways that you've pivoted and the changes you guys are going through.
Yeah, I mean, so early on, like right when this first hit, we kind of had seen it coming because we have these venture-backed clients, and their investors were starting to get some cold feet and stuff like that. So early on, we knew this is going to be a bigger deal than I think initially. I think that the thoughts were like, okay, don't know really how serious to take this. And then we got hit by like this truck when we got news from some of our clients that their investors were like freezing funding for the next 6 months and like all this stuff. And so the next day I just went through and called every single one of our clients, or the CEOs of every one of our clients, and just had like a conversation saying, let's get ready for this. You know, we want to make sure that we're taken care of, but we also need to shift strategies. So on the client side, it meant stronger communication. It also meant changing strategies so that they could adapt. Because, you know, the messaging that we might have for an ad campaign that, you know, maybe involves even a physical event is definitely going to change. So a lot of our messaging changed. We kept iterating that. You know, and I feel like it's been beaten so much now, but like early on, we were talking about stay together even while you're apart. And so the messaging that we were working with really had to change in a lot of our ad campaigns and on our website, because it's such sensitive times. You don't want to offend someone. Yeah.
Stay together while apart. That's really good. You know, what you said about the language needed to change. One of the Annie, one of the copywriters that we spoke with, she runs a copywriting company in town, and she had said, that's right. We've talked about this. It's probably the second time that you've had to tell me, April, I know Annie, so she's wonderful.
We only met once, but yeah, I remember she definitely like struck a chord, and I remember she's a good copywriter.
She's amazing.
Yeah.
She's amazing. We work together a lot. And she had mentioned about going back and looking at all of your messaging, because a lot of people schedule their messaging. They schedule what they're posting in, whether that's email campaigns or on social media. And if your old messaging goes through, it can sound really tone deaf at this time. So make sure you go back and add some, whether that's sensitivity or, hey, these are new times, let's talk about what's applicable here. Because if you post, hey, let's let's go talk about that vacation you were thinking of, or, let's figure out a way to do XYZ that's not applicable right now. It can really sound both insensitive, but you can really lose your audience. You can offend your audience and your clients.
Absolutely. And that's kind of what we'd seen, is like we had ad campaigns that were time appropriate in January that just couldn't work in March or April. So we had to do that full, tear stuff up that we built, and what's the phrase, kill your darlings, that, it would have been great, but of course it's not going to be great anymore.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, that's always.
I was just going to ask, in situations like that, do you kill them, or do you put them in a parking lot and say, I hope we can pull this back in 3 months. I hope this is still applicable in 3 months.
I like the parking lot analogy. Yeah. We most of them put them in the parking lot, but you don't know, right? If you don't use it in the future, you don't use it in the future. And that's part of also working with startups, right? Is startups they have to be agile. And sometimes we go one route and we find out just through data, some of the data comes back, oh, this has a really low click-through rate or low engagement or low conversion. So we just throw it out and try something else anyways. So we're kind of used to that. But it's always in the parking lot, right? We like the ability to go back and pull something out when we need it.
Makes sense. So talk to us about, so we talked about some internal challenges and ways that you guys pivoted within the company. Talk to us about the changes you're seeing in the marketplace and also the opportunities that you're seeing.
Yeah. So we do a lot of Facebook advertising, a little bit of Google advertising. So a lot of this pay-per-click stuff. And when this first started hitting, the first change we saw is that CPMs, it's the cost to reach people. So basically ads are really cheap right now, is what we noticed. And there's a few reasons for that. One is that a lot of people had more time at home. People are spending more time on their phone, consuming media, consuming news. And so there's just more ad inventory. So ad prices got really cheap. But there was something else happening where people didn't have or they were afraid to spend money. So conversion rates also took a drop. And so we saw the ads got really cheap, but conversions got really relatively bad. And it kind of it didn't necessarily make a positive or a negative effect. They kind of countered each other.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was interesting. Our end results, cost per lead events or cost per conversion down the funnel. Those events didn't seem like they were drastically affected, but the way we got there was.
Sure. Matt, let's back up a little bit on that. Give a little context of what I'm just thinking. There are people that are used to buying ads and that's how they promote their business or their services. Talk to us about what that is for the people that haven't bought them before or are thinking about buying them.
Yeah. So on Facebook, everyone gets those promoted ads and things like that. Your friend liked this, your friend did that, or even just this brand wants to show you this content. So all that promoted ad space on Facebook, it's all bought by a company. And we choreograph a lot of that ad buying at True Venture Marketing. And you can do that. Anyone can really set up an ads manager account on Facebook. And that's really a big part of what we do is promote, that top of funnel advertising. And so that's kind of what we're referring to is
Sure.
When you're buying ads, you're buying space on someone's screen. So when there's more people on their phones, ads are going to get cheaper. And actually the other thing is less people like us who are buying ads. A lot of people were cutting their budget because, obviously just the market environment's also taking a hit. Does that kind of answer?
It does. That was perfect. I'm just thinking about for people that didn't have reference point. I didn't think about it. So more people on the phone. So ads are cheaper, but less conversion because some people are a little bit more tighter with their budget right now. Have you seen people like other businesses start to drop out? Because we were just having a conversation the other day, another business owner and I, and he said it's unfortunate. He said, but what I'm starting to see is that all my competitors really tighten their belt. And he said, and I realized this was my time to advance because everybody else is like, I'm going to wait and see. And he's like, well, while everyone else waits and sees, I'm going to rush ahead. Curious if you've seen that too.
Yeah, I think it's a mixed bag. I think it's like you have people who've tightened their belt and you have people who've really advanced ahead. I've had clients say, we saw this in 2008 and we spent a lot and it paid off for us and we want to do that again. And then I've seen people just completely trim the ad budget to bare minimum. So it's a totally mixed bag. One thing I have noticed though is that, and this is just like a high level observation, I don't have enough data to back it up. But Facebook announced something that said ad trends are stabilizing, and we've kind of noticed it too with our CPMs are starting to stabilize. So,
Okay.
yeah, there's some normalization, but
That's good. That's good. I'm assuming that people are starting to adjust to the new normal, whatever that may look like. And so maybe there's not as many sharp, increases or decreases in things. People are just kind of establishing, okay, this is what the new normal looks like, and baselines will emerge out of that.
Yeah. So I'm getting a call. Me hang up on that.
No worries.
Yeah. So I think things are starting to stabilize a little bit. The other thing is that so many companies in the last couple of years have just been dumping money, like irresponsibly dumping money into these media platforms like Facebook, like Google, because maybe they got some venture funding or maybe they had some extra cash. And a lot of the companies who weren't looking at the right metrics or didn't have the right, who didn't have the right return on investment from those ads, they're definitely going to have to trim spending, because they're not going to be getting access to capital right now. It's great on the lending side, but if you're venture funded and you're trying to raise investment, that's definitely it's really hard. It's very difficult to raise venture funding from what I've seen. Few outlier cases, but
sure.
People aren't going to be able to dump other people's money into Facebook and Google to grow.
Would you say those people weren't really applying a strategy? It was just like, all right, we're just going to throw money at this and see if it works. Is it that they didn't have a solid strategy and now this is the time to be strategic?
They had a strategy. I just don't know if it was the right strategy.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So you said some people that are saying, hey, this is kind of like, 2008. And that's actually come up on a lot of our calls, is people saying, hey, we haven't been through this exact thing, but we've been through dips in the marketplace. And here are some of the lessons we learned and how we can leverage them for this time. So you're hearing that as well. And are the people that remember 2008, have been through it, and they remember the strategies that work, those are the people that are pushing in and saying, okay, no, this is still the time to show up. This is still the time to be really visible in front of our clients?
I hadn't even thought of that, and you're absolutely right. They are the same people. Yeah, we have one of our clients built and sold one of the top 10 real estate brokerages in San Francisco before the company he's at now, and that's that was like out of his mouth. He basically said, "We saw this in 2008 and we invested and it paid off. We're going to do that again." Wow. Same type of person.
Yeah. Because I think it's easy. We keep saying the phrase, this is unprecedented times, which it is, if you just look at it from like a viral standpoint. Okay, unprecedented times. But change and challenge and dips in the marketplace, those aren't unprecedented times. We've been through, maybe the stimulus was different, but the response to the stimulus was very similar. And so if we can think about the things that got us through, whether that's personally or professionally, we think about the things that got us through those lean periods, we can leverage that same skill set. And that can be, whether that's a business strategy, that can be a mindset, that can be good habits, but all those things that got us through those tough times very much still apply today. So yes, it's unprecedented in some ways, but I think the conversation, we might want to move away from talking so much about it being unprecedented and instead say, okay, where can we find the similarities of things we've already experienced, things that we already had to navigate, and use those lessons and use those skill sets to get us through this season as well as we can.
Yeah, I love that outlook. And I think you're absolutely right. The health side of things, and which should definitely be taken seriously, is unprecedented, for our lifetime. And the lockdowns are unprecedented, but you're right. Like the economic slowdown is not. That's just part of a healthy market cycle. And if you look at, I think it was Airbnb and some of these huge tech companies right now, like some of the biggest tech companies out there. I think WeWork, maybe even, and I'm not sure Uber. I would definitely fact check this, but a lot of these big tech companies right now were formed right around the last recession.
I read the same thing.
Yeah. And so, that just should be a sign that there is a ton of opportunity in a time like this, and having that contrarian outlook on, how can we capitalize on this instead of having the protectionist mindset of how do we shield ourselves from losses. I think that's where there's opportunity.
Oh, that was really good, Matt. Yeah, that was really good. And the other thing is, so one of the other interviews that we did with Frank Clark, he owns a electronics distribution company. He kept saying what you need to be asking yourself over and over again is, what is my competitive advantage even now? And I loved that approach, because so many people are going into protection mode. So, and understandably so. This isn't from a place of judgment, but people, their cage is rattled and they're like, I gotta be safe. I gotta be protective. And there are people that are advancing while others are retreating. There are people that are advancing, and you want to be responsible. You want to have strategy. We're not just, plowing ahead without a strategy, but there are so many businesses that have been formed in periods just like this. And plus, not even just from an economics or like a market trend standpoint, but also if we see this pullback this time as like the business is like a slingshot, and if we navigate this well, it's going to shoot us forward, because so many businesses, when you look at their trajectory right before their biggest peak, and we've talked about this in our meetings, there's this dip right before. Well, if we think about it, that we're just in the dip right before, we're at the slingshot pulling us back, but we still have to stay the course, or else we don't get the benefit of the forward progression.
That's fantastic. And it, just to reiterate, one of my mentors early on, I asked him, it's the owner of a big agency, so same industry. I said, what do you do when there's a downturn? What do you do when you lose clients? What do you do when you have extra bandwidth? And word for word, it was something along the lines of, you work on yourself during the downturn. And that's what pushes you forward. That's what gives you the ability to gain momentum, is working on yourself.
So true. I love that. That is the time. It's funny. I host several masterminds on Wednesdays, and one of our last ones last night, we were talking about how many people in that mastermind had used this time for digital courses, for extra reading. They're all pretty big book nerds, like myself, and I think you are too. But they're using this time like, all right, well, I'm going to get really good at the financial modeling. I'm going to get really good at my CRM. I've taken this course on, insert skill set that they want to drop in their belt right now. So whether that's having a more robust skill set, whether that's learning a system within your company that maybe, your CRM or your inventory management system that you didn't really go near, you're like, all right, it's finally freaking time. I'm going to learn how this works. How much executive staff know their CRM. I get it, but we need to know what's in there to help leverage it for our staff. But this is the time to tighten up our processes, and also tighten up us, right? Our mindset, our go-to-market strategy. One of my clients, we've been working through his VTO, his vision tracker organizer. So for reference, it's sort of the model of your business, and your 10-year plan, your 3-year plan, the big rocks, the big things that you've got to get dialed in. Also your hurdles, what's keeping you from that. And this was the time. And he's like, just everything's on fire right now. What am I, I've got all these other things I got to focus on. I'm like, I know, but this is a great time to solidify the foundation, make this bedrock that you stand on, because you're going to get through the other side of this. So whether you just suffer through it, or whether you grow through it, that's the part, that's the choice. So as long as we show up and we're going to have to pivot to the marketplace, but as long as we keep showing up and delivering to our clients, we're making it to the other side of this. But we don't want to just be like, whew, barely made it. Instead, oh, there's some things that came out of this. Like, we improved some processes during this time.
I mean, for us, it's definitely interesting, because we did lose clients, right off the bat. We lost some clients. I mean, even before the shutdowns were ordered, and then nothing's happened, right? Everything's been steady. So we lost the clients I think we were going to lose because their funding got tight or whatever, all that. But it gave us time to work on ourselves that we didn't have. Right? We didn't have time to do that. I didn't have time to do all the reading that I wanted to do. I didn't have time to build the tools I wanted to build. I didn't have time to work on processes, just because and I think probably other business owners were in the same situation. Sometimes it's just that you're so caught up in working inside your business, and that happens all the time. And you need to, for a small company like me, I'm super conscious of it. You need to pull yourself out. But this was like a slap in the face. It's like time to work on yourself. And actually go ahead.
No, please go ahead. And then I'll.
Yeah, so we're actually not only are we changing how we work on our clients and how we're handling our clients and how we're communicating with them, we're changing. We're actually bringing in a consultant right now for process management and project management, and we're actually building our own tool that we're going to launch to the marketplace hopefully in the next couple of weeks here.
Wow. Fantastic. That's amazing. So are these all things that you wanted to do before, but just didn't get around to it?
Yeah, these are all things that we've wanted to do. We had started engaging with that project management consultant before this whole thing started, and then decided to continue with it because we needed to do it. And then with a tool that's been on our roadmap for literally since we started, let's build an agency that eventually starts building our own tools. And we just got so busy working on client projects that we never had time to invest in our own tool. But now with the slowdown, we found a great development partner who we've worked with in the past, who is able to partner up with us on it. And we're literally hopefully days away from the MVP.
Oh, can you tell us a little bit about the tool? Or
yeah,
is it super secretive.
It's just super simple. There's it's called Site Scout. It's going to tell people if their website goes down, the minute it goes down, or if their website has a severe loading problem. It'll let the owner know. And I know there's other tools out there that do something like this, but a lot of them are heavy. They require code implementation, or they're expensive, or they're just overbuilt, right? And they tell someone way too much, and so we're literally just targeting the niche of the brick and mortar store owners who need to know when their site's down, but they're not a developer, so they just need to be aware of these things. We're gonna have a really nice free option for small business owners. It's just a way to add value to people when we're not physically working on their projects.
Yeah, that's amazing. I would imagine, because when the site goes down, that costs a business a lot of revenue. If they're doing e-commerce and their site goes down, that's a huge mess. And if you don't know about that right away, it's a lot of revenue lost.
Yeah, and I've been super surprised how many people have this problem and haven't implemented a solution. One guy I talked to Jake Piera the other day, and his website had gone down the night before we spoke, and I was like, really? Are you kidding me? We're so close to launching this tool. So there's just, and it's always a customer. It seems like it's always a customer that finds it and tells you. And so there's just that little bit of embarrassment, and you want to save that. Yeah,
that makes so much sense. Wow, that's amazing. Sounds like a great tool with a huge need in the marketplace. And I love that you said so many of the solutions out there are either very expensive and or overbuilt, because we've run into that, right? Where it's there's this solution and it does these 100 things, and I'm like, no, we're not a tech company. Yeah. We need to do 3 things.
Yeah, 2 things. Yeah, load time, make it down. That's it.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's great. And I love that. It doesn't surprise me, Matt, but I love that you're investing in this time, that you're saying, okay, this is the time for this project that we know is going to add a tremendous value to the marketplace. We're investing in, project management or consultants. We're doing these other things to make us better and make sure we deliver more. There's a lot of people who wouldn't do that right now. There's a lot of people that would say, oh, I got to wait and see. And you're not waiting and seeing. You're like, no, we're creating this. We're going ahead. We're getting through the other side of this, and we're just building stronger and stronger foundations. So when we all come out the other side of this, we've got a stronger business than how we went into it.
Yeah, thank you so much for recognizing that. We spent a lot of time working on ourselves, pulling back that slingshot, if you will, so that we can get through this. And once that economy starts turning around, we turn around with it and accelerate even faster.
When you lost the clients that you lost, I'm curious if you, we've heard a mixed bag on this. Did you go, okay, well, we've lost whatever it is. Let's just say we've lost 10% of our clients. Did you go, we're going to go replace those 10%? Or did you make that conscious effort or that conscious decision of, no, we're not replacing that 10% because we're using this allotted time for our internal projects?
That's a really tough one. So my first instinct is we lost X% of our client base. And what can we do with how do we protect ourselves? So we made some pullbacks on team hours until, this is before there was even word of PPP and these federal grants and loan programs. But it was, the mindset was, okay, how do we get this back as soon as possible?
Yeah.
And I, we did act really quickly. Like we cut fast, we cut deep. So it definitely affected our team time, but then we applied for the PPP really early, and we did get into the first round. And that allowed us to bring back our team. And then we have this mismatch of, well, fortunately we have more team hours than we can actually even put towards client work. So we need to find new ways to invest. And so that kind of guided now, like the decision of, this is the perfect time to invest in Site Scout, this is the perfect time to invest in ourselves.
Sure.
And so it gave us the flexibility, and we're still doing, we're still like, we've had a lot of, surprisingly, I've had a lot of leads come in actually. But what's been interesting is it seems like the leads that I've had come in are really shopping around right now.
Shopping around, you said?
Yeah, shopping.
Oh, okay.
They've been looking at a lot of different options.
They have the time on their hands.
They have time on their hands, which makes sense, and I have no problem with that. Like, and I'm not the hard salesperson who's gonna like twist someone's arm into working with me, because if it's not right, it's not right.
Yeah.
But it's been interesting because we've had these leads come in, and a lot of them are looking at 10 different agencies, which is like tough for all 10 agencies, because every one of them putting in work to get this small handful of clients. But anyways, I'm kind of pulling off track here. In the end, our response has kind of been shaped by the inputs. So as they come, and it's been hard. It was hard to predict early on how this would all play out. Sure. And I think pieces have started to fall into place really well. Yeah.
So Matt, I'm curious how, kind of in a different direction, in leading your team through this. So as the owner, as the founder of the company, how conscious have you been? How focused have you been on, how am I showing up as a leader? What am I modeling for my team? Because, now it's become a little bit more normal, if you will. But at the beginning, people really struggled. There was a lot of uncertainty. And I'm curious how much you're, okay, I'm going to show up and I'm going to be intentional about leading them, reminding them, we're going to keep moving ahead. The business is going to thrive through this. Talk to us about how you showed up as a leader during this time.
I think the thing that the one like word that keeps coming to mind is empathy.
Good.
We have,
you said that.
Thanks. We have team members who have families, who live with their grandparents. We have team members who are just starting out their professional career. And we have team members who compete. Like we have a team member who competes in professional cycling events, and all their events are canceled. So there's a lot more going on than just work right now, right? Everything's been affected. Our work lives, our home lives. And so I've been doing my best to obviously be try my best to be an example of, let's show up to work and let's do our job, but also let's take care of our lives at home and let's take care of each other right now. When we had to make cuts to the team, I made sure everyone knew it's like, I've got your back. We've got each other's back. We're still a team, even though we're making cuts. And so, and we were able to bring people back in. So we came back together, and I think that set us up for success. But I think empathy is key right now, just to relate to your team and understand where they're coming from, because they're going through so much more turmoil than just what the company is going through.
Yeah. God, that's so good, Matt. One of the earlier interviews that we did with Mark Keene, he said, you don't know how much it costs to be that person right now.
Yeah.
And that was such a good reminder, because we think about how we're navigating it. But you mentioned you had a staff member that, it lives with his grandparents and no doubt is probably caring for them or providing groceries, and has additional strains upon him that maybe he didn't have 2 months ago. And just being empathetic to, I don't know what it's like. I don't know what situation he just came from this morning. There's a lot of uncertainty. I love that you say empathy, because I actually think that's what we need a whole lot more of right now.
A whole lot more of that right now. Absolutely.
Yeah. I was having a conversation with our writer the other day, and she's like, we need the empathy bone. Like, that's what we really need. And like, and everything you see about people posting, and there's so much from a social media perspective that people are posting. And I always remind myself that we're all kind of living out our story, and we're kind of going to the things that we know and are safe. And sometimes we're reaching a little bit, but people are under stress. And when people are under stress, they do funny things. And sometimes they're short tempered, or sometimes they're, turn to maybe reach for some bad habits. But ultimately, what we really do need to model is a whole lot of empathy. I'm so glad you said that.
Thanks for reiterating. No, absolutely. And I like the empathy bone.
That was Annie. That wasn't me. All good. Annie.
That's really good.
Yeah.
It's crazy times for so many people. So I think we just need to be empathetic and try our best to understand where people are coming from.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the other things we talked about is in our leadership style, making sure that we're really engaging with them on perhaps deeper conversations than we're accustomed to having with our team. I know you have a really tight relationship, but from our discussion, it sounds like you've got a really tight relationship with your team. But the speaker Chris Hogan always says, don't do drive-by leadership. Like, hey, how you doing as you're walking by? And as soon as he said that, I thought, oh, drive-by leadership. I know exactly what he means.
That too, though, right? And I like when we're here in person, and someone comes into work early, then there's time for that. I'm just realizing I haven't had enough of those conversations. And so that's great. And for me right now is like, okay, I need to have more of those conversations, because it's like the creative thing. If you have those conversations in the office when you're all together, but when you're working from home, there might not be enough time for that.
So true. It's one of the things I've seen people do is schedule a happy hour. So that's the time that we're all going to come in either with our green tea or our glass of wine, and then that social hour. And it's funny, Matt, as I tell you the story, I paused and thought, am I creating that with my team? Because I think I'd moved away from that. And I think for me, we work a lot on productivity and time management. And so I think of it as like productivity, like, all right, let's get to work.
Yeah.
And yet we've got staff in such varied situations. We've got staff with 2 or 3 kids at home. I've got 2 or 3 people that are solo, that they are quarantined alone. Wow. Yeah, I wish I could share his text. He sends me some pretty funny stuff. But he's like, I'm not reaching for good habits right now. This is not going to be good. And though he's joking around about it, I've got to be sensitive to like what he's going through. Like he's done some pretty strict quarantine, which means he's by himself a lot in his house. Yeah. There's some struggle there. And so some of the responses we got on the PivotMe lives were asking more specific questions than how are you doing? So one of our guests had said, I asked specifically, like, how are your kids? Or in your instance, maybe, how's your grandparents doing? Are they getting out? Are they getting some sun? Like very direct questions, which will bring about a more authentic response, right?
Yeah, that's really great advice. And I'm like thinking through this right now. We do have we have been doing weekly happy hours.
Good.
And that we just started that last week actually, and it was such a good experience because we someone in EO had sent out to one of our Zoom meetings. They sent out like their stand-up schedule, and some of the questions were just so good that I had to adapt them. I think it was actually Matthew MacGyver had some just fantastic questions that they
Of course he did. Way to go, Matt.
Yeah, shout out to Matt MacGyver. And I was like, well, I want to take some of these, and we pulled actually some of them into our happy hour to guide conversation in happy hour, which is really helpful. And it's, share a win, share an appreciation, share this, and just getting people bringing the team together, because we've got a small team, so we're able to be really close, and I think we need to guard that right now because we're apart. So it's easy to just not, it's easy to not have conversations. But it's important to make sure you have them.
So I want to ask about specifically with the creative space. I'm thinking about what we talked about earlier. Productivity is up, maybe creativity is strained a little bit more. Is there something so for the people that will listen to this that also run creative businesses?
Yeah.
Is there something that you recommend that they do? I mean, is this something that you're talking to your team about to foster a more creative environment, whether that's going to a room in your house or putting on music, or like, how do you manage that remotely?
Personally, as someone who does creative, I've been working outside at times when it's nice out. I've been, definitely putting on a little bit of music here and there. But I think the big one is just communication. Getting on the phone, spending time with your clients, trying to imitate that FaceTime.
Mm-hmm.
I started doing pop-in phone calls, which is just like probably the most annoying thing ever to our team. I've been just dialing, I'll call Sergio up, and in the middle, like, I won't even tell him I'm going to call him, but I'll just be basically tell everyone on the team, be ready for a pop-in phone call today, and we'll talk for 15, 20 minutes, and just, how's this project coming, what's going on here, how can I help you?
Mm-hmm.
Trying to play the support role, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we've come up with some much stronger ideas and stronger strategies doing that. So yeah, I think shift up your environment when you're working on creative alone. That's helped me personally.
Mm-hmm.
And then talk to your team, talk to your coworkers, and talk to your boss when you're working on ideas and you want to flush out some of it.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. One of the gals that I had talked to last week, whenever she did her creative work, she always went to a cafe. So she works remote naturally. And she's like, I work at a cafe 3 times a week, and now that's gone. And so we were talking about recreating our house space, and like, can you take your desk and can you face it this way? And can you put a picture up? Or like, I've got a giant picture of Banff behind me, because if I'm going to stare at a wall, I want to stare at a mountain. And there's none nearby to look at. So we were talking about ways that she can kind of like curate her environment so that she feels a little bit more creative during that time.
That's huge. Yeah, and I think the environment, or like the work we do, is almost always influenced by the environment we're in. And like, I look at a lot of if you look at a lot of like Reno's graphic design and Reno's art, there's a lot of line-based art. And if you look at the buildings around Reno, a lot of them are like have a lot of lines. So the environment that you're in is definitely a factor, I feel like, in the work you do, especially in the creative space.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. So Matt, you had mentioned previous to our call, we were talking about some metrics that we've been chasing may have been flawed, and that we've got to adjust some of our behavior on just kind of bringing it back to how we need to do business a little bit differently. What has changed in that regard, and what would you recommend for people that maybe would use, to work together with a company like yours?
Mm-hmm.
What has changed, and what do we need to do differently moving forward?
Yeah, so in our space, and not everyone's space, but in our space, working with software as a service companies, working in digital, some work in direct to consumer, so like e-commerce. Everyone looks at LTV. Everyone looks at cost of acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
LTV being, what's a customer worth over their lifetime, and then customer acquisition cost, CAC. That's how much does it cost you to get a customer, and those are good metrics, like, and we follow them. I think everyone should be aware of those, but they don't shine the light on how are you treating your customers, how did customers talk about you, and those are really hard things to measure, right? So there's the hard thing, there's like the hard metrics that everyone's been focused on, and then there's like the soft metrics that aren't easy to measure but are super important. And I think those soft, like, how are people responding to your brand? How are people talking about you? How do they feel about you? Like, that kind of stuff is what's going to matter right now, because we've got to play the long game, right? And a lot of these e-commerce metrics that we've been focused on, what's your CTR, what's your click-through rate, how many people are seeing your ad versus clicking on it, how many, right? These hard metrics don't show how your brand's shining on the people. And so it's, and I, this is really early thoughts on it, but we're playing too short of a game here, right? We're not looking far enough into the future. Sure, we might be able to drive revenues up for the month, but it might be at the cost of providing the worst customer experience and having a customer for less time in the future. And so what we should be focused on is retention and brand equity, and how we treat people over the long term, to make sure we deliver an amazing customer experience rather than just try to monetize customers in the short term.
So would you say that this is the time that we need to be, I just want to make sure I hear that last part right. So it's more a focus on client retention versus new business development? Or
I think it's all about
bringing in new business, rather.
it's both, right? It's both, but it's all about the client experience right now. And I think that's what we need to really be conscious of, is making sure the product stands on its own to deliver that great client experience. And that everything we do, our marketing, our communication, customer service, everything builds that product up. So it builds the experience up.
Yeah. I'm thinking about a conversation that we had with Dana Doswell, and she said, now more than ever, people care how you do business. And it kind of reminds me of that, because she said your business ethics matter more now than they ever did. And people are looking at how you're doing business and how you're treating your clients. And it matters a lot more right now. And
they'll remember it, right? Like, I know that I actually just posted a blog. There's a blog post I just wrote about retention and how it actually pays off for SaaS companies or software companies right now to give away their product if it retains users, right? Because you might give away your product for 2 or 3 months, give free access to it, and that in the long term is actually going to cost you less than, say, losing. Giving a customer a free product for 3 months is going to cost less than losing them for a year.
That's interesting. Yeah, it makes complete sense.
Right. So like that's actually something that, and it's not always a recommendation, but in a lot of cases I'll recommend, like, it might be worth giving your product away to people who are thinking about canceling. Just as it'll help retain them, and they'll remember it, right? They'll remember, like, wow, this company actually, they stuck their neck out for us, and they took a short-term hit instead of trying to, squeeze a few more dollars out of me, and not give me a refund for this month or whatever. Right? It's all about how we treat our customers.
Yeah, I think that definitely we should all, business owners should pause and think about, what is our customer experience right now? How are we treating them? What, when you're talking about shining a light on your brand, what are people thinking about when they're thinking about your brand? What are they associating with it? Because this is the time where our movements are, I don't want to say more judged than usual, but there's more of a spotlight on our movements. And so this is the time to make a profound impact. But likewise, you don't want to stumble and do the wrong thing, because people might really notice right now. And so think about, okay, well, what do people think? What do people experience with my brand, with the, if you're a client and you're moving through our process, what is their experience? And how do we make it really important, or how do we make it stellar right now? Because in times of struggle, people remember who showed up and the service they delivered.
Absolutely. And I think you just hit the nail on the head with that one.
Yeah. So Matt, is there anything else that you would, give us a piece of advice, or whether it's advice that you would give to a client or just advice to business owners during this time? And this could be overarching business advice or something specific to your industry. What would you say to a business owner right now?
I think a lot of it we've talked about, right? A lot of the advice I would give, it's out there on this podcast. But to wrap up, I would say definitely number one, put your customer first right now, over your bottom line, over your profits. Put your customer first, put their experience first. Make sure that you're treating them in a way that they will remember it. They won't give up on you because you're not giving up on them, and you're giving more than you're taking. Right. You wouldn't be, like, the way I see it is, like, we wouldn't have built up our businesses to where they are if it weren't for our customers. And so right now they're all struggling. And so we need to make sure that we return the favor a little bit. And that kind of leads into the second point of just being empathetic with your team, right? If you have a team under you, or even if you have coworkers that maybe they're acting different, or maybe they're harder to get a hold of or something, just know there's probably something else going on. Everyone's dealing with a lot. And so, like, empathy is the winning word right now. We definitely need to hold tight to empathy. And lastly is just communication. It's hard. It's super hard. We're dealing with it ourselves, to just have the normal conversations that we had in the office, that we, in January, the conversations just came naturally, where now we have to schedule time. We have to make sure there's one-on-one time. We have to make sure there's team time, and be intentional about communication, because if you don't, you'll miss things. Like, and we even noticed it early on that our communication was the first thing to suffer when we went remote. And so we needed to be really intentional about not forcing, forcing it, honestly. It's okay to force conversation right now. Because you don't have the opportunity all the time to have that conversation.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
You say it's okay to force it, because I think some people do go, well, it kind of feels forced. And it's like, yeah, it's going to feel forced at first. It has to. There's no water cooler conversations anymore.
The opportunity cost is high when you don't force the conversation. It might not happen at all.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good. Matt, you've given us such great information, both, industry specific and also just business wise and leadership. I love it. I've been jotting down notes, so we've got some really great highlights out of this. Question for you, Matt. So as someone's listening to this and going, I love what Matt says, I love what Matt does. If someone wants to engage with you, how do they do that? Whether that's where do they find you, and also how do they work together? How do they engage you?
Yeah, if you look up True Venture Marketing, you'll see our website's the top link. It's TRUVENTURE marketing. So there's no E in True. You could just go to truvm.com. That's our website. There's a contact form on there where you can reach us. If you want, you can maybe reach out to April and get my email address, if that's okay with you, April.
Yep. And we'll put your links in the show notes. We'll post it as well.
Yeah, and actually, you can post my email on the show notes. Anyways, it gets spammed all the time.
That's a bold move, Matt.
A bold move. I'll do it for listeners of this podcast.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Matt, thank you so much. I really appreciate you hopping on and going to a solo building so that we could hear you well, and you just making the time to invest in us today.
You know what? Thank you so much. This resource is awesome for business owners. I think it's going to add a lot of value. I'm excited to watch more of them. And honestly, I've seen your journey from when I first joined EO. You had a completely different you're in a completely different niche.
Big business,
right? Working for these huge companies, and you literally pivoted into such an extreme level, and now you're kind of sharing that. So I think it's really a cool story that you're building here.
Oh, that's awesome, Matt. There's a reason why the podcast is called PivotMe. Well, one is because we had a trademark infringement with the first name, truth be told. But then it worked out really, really good, because that's literally what I did and so many other people do, right? Is pivot me. Like, life is supposed to pivot us. And even the hashtag we've been using lately is pivot me COVID. Because it's so good, isn't it? We were pretty excited when we thought that one up. But it's true. Like, during this time, we are pivoting, and where we can get stuck is when we're trying to stay the same. And that means during this season, or in general. You just mentioned, I came from the big business world. So I run a consulting firm, Maven. You guys know that. And it's in the big business world. And if I would have stayed that course, and there was a lot of reasons for me to stay that course, so many reasons to stay that course. But that wasn't where I wanted to be anymore. And at some point I decided this was time to pivot. There's just, yes, you can stay doing the thing that you were always did, but there's the best time. What's the phrase? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. And the second best time is to plant it yesterday, or something like that. So I planted my tree, and Matt saw that evolution.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's really bold move of you. Love what you're doing. Thanks so much, April, for having me out.
Yes. Thank you, Matt. Have a great day.
You too.
All right. Take care.